Hello, this is Steve Bostador, and I'm going to walk you through some of the security-related settings with VNC Scan. Basically logging in as another user and performing administrative functions on your server. So let's get started. I'm going to try to make this one short and sweet, but I do want to show you some of the basics because I think the number one support request that I get is permissions related. It almost always comes down to permissions or firewalls. That's probably at least 99% of the questions answered. So hopefully this video will be beneficial and easy to follow to get yourself set up. And we're going to take Kate's laptop here, and the reason I'm choosing this one is because it's a Windows XP Home Edition laptop. Actually, it's a media center, and it's not joined to any domain, and it's a standalone, so it's a prime candidate for permission issues on the network. An example of something that I can't do on it out of the box is if I hit Windows shares and $, I can't connect to the $, share because her computer doesn't know who I am, so it's going to deny me. Another example is if I right click and I say add to thumbnails, and the computer will just sit there forever at the please wait, and it'll never give me a screen because this requires administrative privileges in order to get a remote screenshot of the computer. So let me close out, remove the screenshot and go back. And yet another example is if I go to deploy VNC to this computer, and I'm going to pick a profile that I already made for Ultra VNC. Here I've already got alternate credentials. Let me take that out of here. I don't want that to be in there while we're testing. And if I choose finish, what you're going to see here is enter username for that computer. And if I don't have a username, it's basically going to give me all kinds of errors. But it's the most important one that I see a lot pasted into forums and into emails sent to me is this right here. There was no map drive to the target machine. And system error 1223. There's also a system error 53 that you might see if you put in a username and password that's not valid on the machine. So actually let me do that just to see if I can generate that so that you can see something that you may have ran into. I'm going to put in an invalid user. Yada is going to log into that, and Yada will be the password, and we'll just leave the domain of Bostador or whatever. And push finish. 1326. I'm sorry. But there's other errors that you'll see. If you see system error, you know something's up. And 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be permissions related. And this one actually spells it out underneath unknown username or bad password. So that's a no-brainer. But that's what it is. One way that you can troubleshoot this, a little undocumented feature. If you go to, if you browse to c/temp, or I'm sorry, I put in the wrong. If you browse to c fastpush VNC7, sorry. If you go to fastpush VNC7, if I get time, I'll edit that out so I look smarter than I am. And if you you look at this push command. This is the temporary command file generated by the deployment script. So if I right click and I edit that, I can see the username and password that I used here. Netuse, the computer name /IPC, which is the basically the admin hidden share, and /user, and there's my domain /username, and then my password. Now, if you look at that and that looks fishy, that doesn't look like something that it's supposed to be, then you know that you typed in a password wrong. So that's a quick, easy troubleshooting way to make sure that you are logging on as the user that you intend to do. And if you want to troubleshoot it yourself, you can always copy that, open up command prompt, and try to issue that command yourself by pasting it in. And you're going to get the same thing. So now you can play with it to try to figure out a valid username and password to get in. So, and then in the trick to this is you got to leave this open while you're doing this, because if you let this thing get through to the end and then cancel out, and you hit any key to continue, the file gets deleted. See, it's gone now, so you can't go back and troubleshoot. So the only time you can see that push.command is while the script itself is running. So that's important if you want to troubleshoot. So we're going to go back to here, and we're going to get ourselves in successfully now. I know what the administrator username and password is for that computer. So I'm going to right-click, and another thing I want to show is that there's a layered approach to this. In other words, there's more than one location that you put a username and password in, and one overrides the other depending on where you go. And it's kind of logical. It starts at global. If you go into the global preferences, if you're in one company and you have one password for all your computers, the best place to put it is right here in the global one. So that way it applies to every single group that you have in here. So I would put in administrator, passwords, and if I'm on a domain, I would get rid of that and put in the domain name. This is overridden by the group. If we right click the group now and choose properties, there's an identification tab here. Now, and see, I do have something in this one. This overrides anything that you have in preferences. So if you have a global domain and you put something in preferences, but you have a group for, say, another location that has a different administrator username and password, this will override whatever you put in the preferences anyway. So, and a good example of that now is on Kate's computer, on Kate's laptop. Even though I have one set at the global, in the default group, I can set one at the computer level if I choose computer properties, and it's going to override what's at the group. So let's go to Windows Logon. I'm going to type in what I know as the administrator username and password for that computer. And I'm going to leave it at host because the computer's not on a domain, as I mentioned before. So I hope I'm not talking too fast for you. I sound like a used car salesman trying to fly through this, but I want to keep these videos under 10 minutes, so I'm trying to fly through these kind of quick and try to, I guess, rewind if I go too fast through something, or you can always catch me on the forums. But anyways, so here we go. I'm going to choose OK, and now for Kate's laptop only, that username and password is going to be used. Now, if I right-click on that computer, Windows Shares, C $, you see that sign down here, it's authenticating with her computer. Give it a moment. It's a slow wireless network, so it'll take a second. And there it is. Now I can see her C $. So that's pretty much that. And I want to go through one troubleshooting thing. Sometimes you'll notice that there's a host name field and an IP address field. Some networks, especially VPN or routing, routing remote access networks, some RAS networks, DNS doesn't resolve properly. It's just the Microsoft way. It doesn't resolve properly. So you might run into some authentication issues because of that, and I'm going to show you a workaround to that. And the same workaround it also helps another problem where if you are connected to, say if I was connected to Kate's laptop as a username of a lesser value, so say I'm just a regular user or a power user, I'm accessing some shares that Kate's sharing off, or or her printer maybe, so I don't necessarily have to be an administrator to be connected to this thing. So I connected under my normal username, my normal non-admin username to Kate's laptop. I have a session now to that computer, and I'm not going to be able to create a second share to that same computer, the computer name, as a different user. So I'm going to get an error message if I try to connect to her again as a regular user. I don't have a scenario set up for that right now, so I can't show you. You have to take my word for it or run into it yourself. But the quick workaround of that is to tell VNC Scan to use the IP address instead of the host name when connecting to computers. And that really needs to get changed in future versions so that that's the default. It just makes most sense to always use the IP address when connecting to the computer. But where you could set that is up here in the global preferences. and use IP address instead of host name when connecting to computers in the program options. If I check that and choose OK, from then on it'll connect and use the IP address. So if you have any other questions, just email me or visit the website at www.vncscan.com, and I'll be happy to help you out. Thank you.